Kristy Bailey. I'm a presenter and a advisor on behalf of the ASPAS program, or the Digital Solutions program for Business Station. Sorry we're running a little bit late today. I was just in between appointments, so sorry to keep you waiting. But my background is marketing. I have a marketing business aside from doing some advising. So what we're going to go through today is largely based on my experience and things that I implement on a daily basis. So today is designed to be interactive. Please feel free to ask questions at any time. You can see the Q&A functionality and the chat functionality. Andrew's reached out to me to say hi, and yes, we have now started, Andrew, so I can see that chat come through, so please continue to use that. All right, so what we're going to go through today, we're going to go through a range of different things, but we're going to, first of all, identify the components of a marketing strategy and also a marketing plan. And then we'll look at how a strategy can have huge financial benefits to you, or having that strategic approach can. So we're also going to identify a range of low-cost marketing tactics. And those tactics you might be able to implement within your business, or you might be implementing them already. So we're going to have a look through some of those things and some of those ways that you can market on a shoestring budget. If you do have anything in particular that you have perhaps been working on or that you need to work on further, again, please stop me, use the chat or the Q&A functionality. The last thing that we're going to look at is the importance of measuring and controlling your marketing activities to make sure that you are actually producing sales and that you're spending your marketing money effectively, which is hugely important as well. So before we get into that though, I just want to really quickly define marketing. So marketing itself is anticipating the needs and wants of targeted customers and managing the process through which those needs and wants are satisfied, but doing so, you have to do it profitably. So one of the key words here in this statement is targeted. You have to know exactly who you're selling to so that you can know their specific needs and wants, and therefore provide them exactly what they want. And you can then provide it where and how they want to see it as well. So one of the key elements of today's webinar is looking at the theory that successful marketing doesn't have to cost your small business significantly, but you absolutely need to know the results of what you're doing so that you can make sure that you're spending your money in the right areas. So that will all tie into strategic planning, and that's really where this sort of element of strategic marketing on a shoestring budget comes into it. So a lot of small business owners will create a business plan when they start up. With the day-to-day running of the business, generally speaking, a lot of time goes by before you refer back to that plan. Some businesses don't refer back to it at all. So you have to keep in mind that a lot can happen in a business during that time. So your priorities might shift. You could introduce new products or services, key staff could come and go. So having a think about that, do you have a business plan? And if you do, when did you last review it? So the best way, I think, to make sure that you're marketing effectively and reaching your goals is to go through that important process of annual planning. Each year, take the time to measure your progress, assess really specific steps that you're going to take in the year coming to ensure that you stay on track. That will then tie in with your marketing strategy and being able to market really in a cost-effective way. So to define the strategic planning elements of your business, I would have a look at a pyramid like what you see in front of you. The marketing strategy has to align with that overall business plan and your business goals. And then it defines the marketing mix, which is essentially just your price, your product, your promotion, and your place, or how you're going to distribute your product or service. And then that last little element at the tip of that pyramid is your marketing plan. And that's really simply the implementation of it all. So that could include allocating marketing resources. It could be just the implementation and budgeting for your actual marketing activities. So marketing strategy, that second element that you see there, is really a selection of the course of action that you're going to take. So it involves specific customer groups, or target markets, communication methods, distribution channels, and your pricing structures. So it's a combination of really your target markets and your marketing mixes. So the huge advantage to strategic planning is that it allows you to find and use what really works, and then you stay completely focused to that plan. So some of you may or may not have a marketing strategy. we are going to talk through some elements of a marketing strategy now. But for most small businesses, developing a marketing strategy, or the thought of developing a marketing strategy, it has that perception that it comes with a lot of overhead. So there's obviously overhead involved to develop the strategy. So we're going to talk through how you can actually develop that yourself. And then sometimes if you're contracting a marketing agency to develop a strategy, they might then develop a plan that would come with a significant marketing budget. So I believe there's a number of different marketing tactics that you can implement and you can obviously do yourself, that don't have to necessarily be expensive, but they may take a little bit of time and that technical element to set up. So before we get into the tactical side of things, we're just going to touch on a few elements of a strategic plan. Like I said, I do truly believe that you can implement a strategic plan yourself. I don't, and not so much implement it, sorry, you can develop a strategic plan yourself. I think that you can do the research, you can pull these elements together. Small business owners and managers are the very best people that are placed to provide a lot of the internal research and information that goes into a strategy. Now, for me, to develop a marketing strategy, it takes a number of weeks. There's a lot of information that has to be gathered. You then have to analyze that information. You have to go back and forth in that process, and then ultimately you'll develop a strategy around everything that you've learned and everything that you know from your own business internally. So some of the key strategic research areas include your SWOT, which is the marketing 101, a lot of these things, but your SWOT is your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Strengths and weaknesses are internal, and opportunities and threats are any external factors that have the potential to impact your business. Another research element is your PEST analysis or PESTLE analysis. So that's your political, your economic, your social, and your technological factors. Again, a lot of these factors would be external. They may have the ability to impact your business, or maybe not, but things that you need to be aware of. Now, some organisations will go on to extend that into the environmental and legal factors as well. So think about your business and whether or not all 6 of those factors impact you, or just the 4. Then there's a competitor analysis. So again, analysing your own competitors, and looking at them against your own business. So how do you sort of stack up to what you're offering, what your strengths are, what their strengths are, what weaknesses sit within each of the businesses as well. You have to incorporate a sales analysis into your marketing strategy. So analysing your own sales results and planned growth areas. So will you change products? Will you look at different seasonality? And we'll talk about that in a little bit more depth as well. You've got to define your USP. So you have to know what your unique selling proposition is, and what is it about you that is unique, and different in comparison to your competitors, but also is desired by your customers. So what is it that you're pitching to clients? What's the value that you're offering them? You have to define your target market. Your target market is absolutely core in everything that we're going to talk about today. And I'm going to expand on that and explain the importance of it in just a second. Then you've got your marketing mix, which is your 4 Ps, your product, price, your place, and your promotion. And I will also expand on that one. Then you've got your financial analysis and budgeting. So thinking about how much you're going to budget for marketing. I get this question all the time. People want to know how much should they be spending on their marketing, and there's no right or wrong answer to that. You absolutely have to work within your own capabilities in terms of financial capabilities, but generally speaking, it is said that you should spend between 4 and 10% of your gross revenue, or the equivalent, on marketing. So 4% will maintain your market position, whereas going up to that 10% will grow your position. But you have to estimate the demand given the pricing and your promotional strategy as well. In your budgeting, you have to consider what marketing is going to cost you, and expenses associated with actually producing things like ads or brochures or any of your marketing material. And you have to know if your strategy, or when cash is going to flow with this particular strategy. So a cash flow analysis or a cash flow forecast is really important as well, to allow you to know when you're going to be able to spend money on marketing. In terms of looking at your strategy, you also have to look at what the critical assumptions are of your strategy and the financial analysis of it, and what the impacts and changes of those assumptions might be. So some of these strategy areas are very straightforward and obvious, and it will require you going away, doing a bit of research, and then sort of coming back and analysing that research. But some of these areas are a little bit more in depth. So I am going to expand on those and go through them shortly. Just very quickly though, there is a fantastic template for developing a marketing strategy. So if anyone that signed on today does want a copy of that, please reach out to me. Either just pop your details in the chat, just your email address, and I'll make sure that that gets sent through to you. Or you can email Kristy at businessstation.com.au for further info on that and for a copy of that template. All right, so going on to the target market, I'm sure that you'll get sick of hearing me talk about target markets by the end of this session, because I truly believe it's the most important component of marketing, and also the most important component of marketing on a shoestring budget. You have to truly know your target market. So a target market is a market segment that has been selected by your business for marketing attention. So not to be confused with who comes through your door at the moment, or who are your core clients. This is a segment that has actually been targeted by you or chosen by you. How you're going to determine who that is through research. And through the research that I've spoken about in terms of the marketing strategy elements, you might find that there might be target markets or market segments that no one's reaching or communicating to. There might be target markets that are being served by your competitors, but perhaps they're not doing that very well. Or there could be other target markets that are saturated with options. So they're going to be a lot more difficult to get to, and therefore probably not the right fit for you. There are some key criteria to determine if a market segment is a viable segment. So it really should meet 4 criteria. The first is that the individuals or businesses within that segment have to be homogenous, so they should all be alike. The second is that they have to differ from the general population, but also be different than other market segments. So you have to really determine who they are in terms of a number of dimensions, but it could be demographics, it could be psychographics, it could be generations, geographic location, their benefits and usage of your product. So it has to be really specific and not just the general population. The third criteria is that they have to be large enough to be financially viable to support marketing attention from you. So some market segments might meet the first 2 criteria, but they're not going to generate enough revenue for you to actually actively go out and target them. If they come through your doors, that's absolutely fine, but you're not going to go out and target them specifically. Now, the last criteria is not really that relevant in most cases, but it can be, but it's that the segment has to be reachable through some type of media or marketing communications methods. So there are some market segments in other parts of the world that, they just can't be reached through media, but we don't really have that issue. Sometimes this point gets a little bit confused with if you've got children, for example, they're still reachable through their parents. So in all cases, if you're targeting a market, don't think about who the end user of the product or service is. Think about who the decision maker is. So you have to have that clear picture of your target market from a perspective of who is making that decision. Now, if you don't have a clear image of your target market, as a small business, you'll try to reach everyone. And what happens is you end up appealing to almost nobody. So you should be able to describe and even visualize your core target market. When I'm creating a marketing a document or a strategic marketing plan, we often actually do collages of images to really define who that person is so that you can actually visualize them. So really think about that. This is at the core of everything you're going to do. Now, keep in mind, if you know exactly who your target market is, what they look like, where they shop, what age bracket they're in, what sort of income they've got, where they're located geographically, all of this information, you know exactly where to place your business in front of them to capture their attention. So the average person is, years ago was subjected to about 4,000 pieces of advertising a day. That would have quadrupled, if not even more so, become a lot busier, I should say, in terms of marketing noise. So people would be seeing thousands and thousands of pieces of advertising and marketing per day. So if you're not putting your message in front of the exact right person from, a really targeted approach, then it's just going to get lost amongst all of that noise. All right, so marketing mix is the next element. So you have to define your strategies to achieve your goals and objectives based on your marketing mix. Now, your marketing mix are those controllable factors that have been chosen to satisfy your customers' needs. So those 4 controllable factors are your product, your price, your place, and your promotion. So there is also an extension on this. You can go on to include 7 Ps if you include people, process, and physical environment. So depending on what is appropriate for your business, consider if there are in fact 7 Ps. Oh, sorry, I've just seen a question come through on Q&A. Just going back to target markets, Meredith's asked, how can you find this persona info when you only have an online store? You've got Google Analytics, but it only shows demographic data. That's actually a really interesting question. So Meredith, what you're talking about there is somewhat retrospective. So you're looking at who has been to my website. What we're doing here when we're looking at a marketing strategy is actually forward planning. So you're looking at, I've got this product or service. Yes, it's available online, but who is going to be purchasing it? So you really have to understand usage, you have to understand the market, you have to understand your competitors. So all of those elements that we talk about when you talk about a marketing strategy have to be factored in so that you know exactly where to advertise your online store, where to pitch your product. So those kind of things are really important, and that's why a marketing strategy is absolutely crucial. If you just look at your Google Analytics and having a look at demographic data there, you're only relying on people that have already found you. How have they found you? You're not too sure. So we're, rather than looking at it retrospectively, we're forward planning in that sense. So that's a really important factor, and that's where your internal and external research comes into it. So understanding as much as you can about your product and your business, which you would know, but also understanding what the market is, what the demand is, what consumer trends are, what the industry is doing that you operate in. So there's a number of elements, and it all comes down to research. So hopefully that answers your question. In terms of, sorry, just going back to your product price, place, and promotion, as I mentioned, there are 7 Ps if you include people, processes, and physical environment. Now, in terms of products, first of all, does your product range complement each other, and does it suit who you've identified as your target market? Just in line with Meredith's question there, have you done that research to know that there is actually interest in the product that you've developed? So that's a really key thing. You might need to make some changes to your product based on research that you've done to appeal more to a target market. Also, how do your products sit alongside each other? You might have 3 different styles of products, and they're all vastly different, and therefore someone comes onto your online store as an example, and they see the 3 products, but they can't understand how they all sort of fit together. So your product range has to meet or match your branding as well. So the products are really important, and a lot of changes to products will come as a result of research. Now, as an example of this, I've worked on a marketing strategy in the past where we did a lot of the research, the external research on consumers, and found that the demand was there to actually change the product. So whilst we're doing a marketing strategy, which you're thinking about how do I advertise and promote my product, we actually had to go back at this product stage and make changes to a product, or service, depending on your business that you're in. So keep that in mind. So that could definitely come as part of this particular process. The pricing is the next thing. How does your pricing suit your target market? Again, through research, you'll know how it compares to your competitors. You'll know how it will appeal to your customers in terms of, how price sensitive they are, income levels, that kind of thing could sort of be indicators there. You also need to have a look at how each price in your product range looks alongside each other. So again, using the example that you've got 3 products, if they were all similar, are the prices clear and what's included in each product, and as to why the prices are different. So sometimes you'll have your really expensive product and then you might have 2 that are slightly cheaper. Does that make sense? Does it make it confusing for the customer to actually make a decision? Because that's another key factor. Also understanding your pricing and if it allows for enough profit. So profit's a major factor, and at this point you might have to look at adjusting your pricing if you're not in fact making enough profit. Then there's place or distribution. So looking at where do buyers look for your product or service. Is it online? Is it direct with you, bricks and mortar, or is it via some kind of agent, or do you wholesale your product? So thinking about that, how can you access the right distribution channels? Now, if you do wholesale your product, you might have to go back to your pricing and incorporate that into your strategy. So, okay, well, we're actually going to have to offer this at a much lower wholesale price. So therefore, we have to increase the retail price. So pricing factors will come in at that point as well. Then you've got your promotion. So what's your strategy around promotion? Now, this could be or how you're going to promote your product or service. Where will you market it? How are you going to get to your market? So now that you know everything about your target audience, you know where they consume media. If you're attracting your customers directly and not through wholesale channels, how can you afford to advertise in the media outlets that they are actively on, or what type of methods will actually appeal to this target audience? You have to know that target audience extremely well to be able to determine where and how you're going to promote your product or service. So keep that in mind as well. So that's the 4 main strategies. Like I said, there's the extra 3 if it's appropriate to your business, but for the purposes of today, we're not going to get into the additional 3. All right, so that was an absolute fly through of the development of a strategy. So like I said, I've got lots of email addresses there, so I'll absolutely get that, that amazing template through to you. It does take time. In terms of research, that's kind of the core area that takes time. You do have to go back and forth and understand the industry, understand the market, understand your competitors. So it does take patience and it takes time. So keep that in mind. We could talk about strategy all day, but we're not. We're going to move forward. The key point here was really to understand that you can be very targeted and spend your funds, particularly if funds are tight or funds are limited. You can spend it very well with a solid strategy behind you, but it does take time to develop. It's very much worth doing. So to recap, some key reasons that you should strategically plan are, first of all, that it composes the big picture, and it does it through pinpointing your specific target markets, through determining your customer needs and wants by doing your market research, by analysing your competitive advantages, and that allows you to build a marketing strategy around what makes your business differ or what makes you truly stand out from others. And then lastly, it creates a marketing mix that meets those customer needs and wants, and obviously matches your resources at the same time. So some key considerations are that your strategic planning has to match your resources, as I mentioned, and capabilities for long-term growth. You have to factor in all components to get a true big picture. If you were just looking at internal factors, you're not going to know what's out there. If you just looking at external factors, you're not analysing your own business enough. So you have to look at all components. I also believe that strategic planning should be an integrated activity. So try and involve many areas of your business. If possible, if you've got people that work for you or within the business, they could be well placed to provide some key information. So keep in mind, if you don't know what's going on, for example, in the front line, and you're only looking at it from a behind the scenes point of view, you might miss something, and vice versa. If you're only involved in frontline, not involved in production or anything behind the scenes, you're missing that valuable input. So involve your entire team, or at least a selection of your team, to talk about marketing. And I would suggest that you do sort of a marketing strategy type session where people can generate ideas, give feedback, etc., at least on an annual basis. And so if you're the person that's doing the marketing, you have to fully understand how what you're doing can impact other areas of the business as well. So this is a good forum for people to tell you that. So the most important element in marketing on a shoestring budget is being strategic. If you know exactly who you're talking to, what products they want, where they consume media, which is where you should advertise, then no marketing dollar should be wasted. So now we're going to look at some specific marketing activities, and in particular, low-cost marketing activities. Now, before we get into too many of them, keep in mind that you really have to consider that if you're doing things low cost, online is generally the way to go. But if you've done your research, you know your specific audience, and you're targeting your advertising towards that audience and where they consume media, then there are some essential low cost marketing activities. Firstly, online, making sure your online setup is absolutely solid. So that's your website, your SEO, and remarketing, which I'll explain a little bit further. But referrals and reviews online are absolutely crucial. Making sure that you're actually seeking them, and then that you're listening to those reviews. Set up alerts so that you can actually respond to them as well. Google, Facebook, of course, both have review areas. There could be industry-specific review sites like Urban Spoon. There's Yelp, there's Booking.com, TripAdvisor. So depending on your industry, make sure that you understand where people can actually review you. So really make use of those. The next recommendation is just with regards to personalizing marketing. So email, social media should absolutely always talk to your audience and talk about relevant events, relevant times of year. You should also try and obtain an email database if and when you can, so that you can talk more specifically to those people. You can give them products and offers that are tailored to them specifically. So as personalized as you can be. Going back to what I said before about, the average person will see thousands of different marketing messages and pieces of advertising each day. If you're as personalized as you can possibly be to your target market, it's really going to stand out. New customer offers are good. Obviously, once you've got a customer, they cost very little to keep, subject to your customer service and actually delivering on what you promise. So getting them in by way of an offer is always great, but once they're in, you've got to keep them, stay in touch with them, keep them in your cycle. So making sure that you've set up those mechanisms to be able to do so. But definitely create some new customer offers to get them in the door. You really have to nail your value proposition, which is your unique selling proposition, and focus on developing content that highlights that USP, and then storytell that USP through your content. I find as small businesses, there generally is quite a unique story behind the majority of small businesses. So make sure that you know what your value proposition or your unique selling proposition is, and really expand on it through your content. The next point there I've got is PR. So PR, be your own PR advocate. We actually do a media and PR workshop specifically that will talk you through how to get free publicity, how to engage with the media, really use or take advantage of PR opportunities. Again, if you've got a great story to tell as a small business, then quite often there'd be a lot of interest from media outlets. So make sure that you are making use of that. Sponsorship opportunities are really good. You can look at sponsoring events or other charitable donations and that kind of thing. But here, the key thing is making sure that the target market matches your target market. And that will then end up being a good PR opportunity. So, for example, if you're going to sponsor an event, chances are you'd get email communications out to participants. You might get signage and advertising or at the actual event. You might have the opportunity to say a few words, show a video, that kind of thing. None of that is worthwhile unless the people that are sitting at that event are likely to be your customers in the future or are your specific target market. So absolutely know your target market, of course, but make sure that you're only taking advantage of sponsorship opportunities where your target market perfectly matches. The last point I've got here is just don't forget about grassroots marketing. So things like signs, handouts, billboards on your own venue or wherever you can. It's really important. I think that, you know, there's, like I said, there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of digital noise as well in an advertising and marketing sense. So if you can stand out with a bit of grassroots stuff, I think it really works as well. But also do consider traditional marketing. What we're going to go through today is very much talking about online, because like I said, that's the most targeted that we can be and the lowest cost, generally speaking. But if there are traditional marketing opportunities, always consider them. If the price suits your budget and the outlet speaks directly to your target market, it could offer a good opportunity. So we're going to further explore some key online marketing tactics and how best to market your business online, because I do believe that every business, no matter what your industry is, should really be online. And you can really maximize your online presence to get new business and capitalize on every marketing dollar that is spent. Online advertising can be very targeted, and of course it's extremely trackable. So it takes out the guesswork as to whether or not what you're doing is actually producing the right results. We actually prove it. So that's the key thing. Now, before we get into actual advertising online, we'll have a look at your website. This should be at the core of your online marketing. Keep in mind, it is only part of the strategy. Potential customers need to be able to find that site. You also need to actively engage with current and future customers online by way of social media and reviews and that kind of thing. We'll talk more about it being found shortly, but your website itself is a place where customers can find out about your products or services. They might be able to make purchases, even if your physical premises are closed, or you might not have a physical premises at all. So I would think about your website as your 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week salesperson, your number one salesperson. And thinking about it like that, ask yourself if your website's doing your business justice. Is it selling your product or service exactly as it should? Now, there are some key design elements that you should consider. First of all, there should be large hero images that really highlight and tell the story of your product, that speak directly to your target market. So if you've defined who your target market is by way of age and a range of other different factors, then the people featured in the images on your website should represent that target market. Your navigation should be easy. Make sure that you test your navigation with friends and family that might be trying to buy something from your site. You sit in front of them, give them a task to do, to go through and make contact, buy something, whatever that might be, and watch them do it and see if there's any pain points or any blockages along the way. Making sure that there's strong calls to action throughout your site. Now, that could be shop now, it could be buy now, it could be book now, it could be contact us, but there should be a call to action on every page of your site telling the user exactly what you want them to do at that point. It should also be fully responsive. So that is like the image that you see on your screen. It should look good no matter what device it appears on. Now, that could be desktop, it could be tablet. A responsive website will adjust its shape and the menu items and the way it's used depending on what device it appears on. So keep that in mind. It should absolutely look good on mobile, and experts actually say you should be building your website for mobile first, because that's where the majority of users are looking at sites, and then worry about what it looks like on desktop later. So obviously that's dependent on your product or your service and your industry. And the last point I've got there is about content. Make sure there's plenty of content and customers can get enough information about your business, and make sure that the content actually flows. So that also helps at how you're going to rank. Google needs content on your website to understand what the website's about. So imagery is so important to sell your product, but content is fundamentally important to the success in terms of from an SEO perspective. So think about that. If you're getting a lot of calls, people asking the same question or a similar question, maybe you need to look at your content and make sure that your content actually addresses questions that customers might have. So again, there's no blockages in the purchase process or in the transaction process. Now, keep in mind that everything about your website, as I've mentioned so many times, should be speaking to and aimed at your target markets, and that's design, it's colors, it's fonts, it's technology, it's functionality. It's all about that target market. So go back and have a look at that as the very first part in your strategy. Now, having an amazing website is one thing, but you also need people to be able to find that site. So that's where SEO comes into it, and search engine optimization is the term. So we've used the term a couple of times, but for those that don't know what it is, search engine optimization, in very simple terms, is the process of improving your site to increase its visibility for relevant searches. So for SEO to be effective or worth your while, you first of all have to do keyword research. You have to know what people are actually searching and what sort of volume of people are searching, so that you know what words you want to target on your website. So do keyword research before you do any SEO whatsoever or make any changes to your website. So what are people actually searching? There's a couple of tools. One of them is a Google Keyword Planner tool. That's free and available in the Google Ads section or in your Google Ads account. Another is Ubersuggest, and there's also Keywords Everywhere. So have a look at those. They're very easy to use, but basically what you're going to do keyword research, you're going to do a brainstorm of what do you think people search to get to your website. You'll enter them in one of those platforms and it will prove what the search volumes are for specific terms. It will also offer you some alternatives on other similar terms. Once you know that there is a reasonable number of hits that are people that are searching for those key search terms every month, the next step is for your website to improve its rankings for those key search terms, and that's for search engines like Google. So there's no SEO is quite a tricky thing. I'm going to talk through a lot of the factors, but basically it's a culmination of hundreds of different tactical efforts and technical elements. So SEO changes and evolves. So things that you might have done in the past might not be as significant today. So it is important to continuously look at SEO. It does take time. If you're making any changes, I would allow at least a month before you start to see any results. And because it is a constantly changing landscape, you have to make sure that you know what is happening with the latest algorithms and any changes that might be happening, and modify your SEO accordingly. So SEO includes two sides, on-page and off-page optimization. So we're going to talk through each of those now. Excuse me. So first of all, you've got on-page SEO. On-page SEO is everything that happens on your site that affects the ranking. So you've got readable URLs as an important factor. Now that's, your website.com.au/about us, for example. Or you could have your website.com.au/ and have a code. Obviously, the code is not going to do you any favors whatsoever. The about us is going to speak directly to Google. So I would make sure that your URLs are absolutely readable and they're utilizing your keywords as well for that particular page. So you've got to remember that each page ranks in its own right. So, your About Us page and each of your product pages and, various pages on your site will all rank separately. I couldn't think of the word. Then you've got internal links. So having good internal links, page-to-page linking relevant content is really important. So for example, here you might have your homepage that starts to talk about your product range. When it's talking about your product range, you want it to link to those specific pages on your website. So internal page linking is really important. Now, that makes it very easy for the user. So think about, you're reading the homepage of a website. It starts to tell you about the products that it has for sale. You can click that product and go straight to that page. It saves you having to go back up to the top to the menu and then going back down and finding where that product page is and then clicking it. So if it's good for the user, it generally is pretty good from an SEO perspective as well. 301 redirects are also important, making sure that people aren't going to pages that no longer exist. So if you were to take a page down on your website, for example, rather than just deleting that page, you would do a redirection in the back end of your website so that you are telling a search engine that if people go to this particular URL, actually send them to a different one. So people don't go to those error pages. That's really important. Google doesn't want to be sending people to websites that have broken links and aren't working, which is why it's such a major factor from an SEO perspective, but it's also such a huge factor for consumers as well. You don't want to be sending people to dead pages either. So that's a bit like a mail direction. Then you've got your page load time. So keep an eye on your speed. Image sizes can impact that. Obviously, there is a Google developer tool where you can actually check the speed of your website. So do a speed test and make sure that you're all good from a speed perspective. Otherwise, you might need to make some changes. Again, Google doesn't want to send people to websites that take forever to load or and not loading at all. So keep that in mind. It's not good for the user and it's not good from an SEO perspective. Now, there's also page title tags, there's meta descriptions and alt tags. So they start to get a little bit more technical. So I'm going to expand on those. First of all, you've got page title tags. So each of the pages in your website should have its own unique title tag. So have a look at the red box around the title tag that I've got there. These should include the main keywords for that particular page. So it's not the headline that's displayed on the page. It's only visible in code view. So keep that in mind. It's something that you'll have to do behind the scenes. Now, Google and other search engines use it to display as the main title in their search results. So for this example, I've Googled Aspas Perth and what you can see on my screen comes up. So the optimal length here is 60 characters, and that's long enough to display a good title without it getting cut off. So make sure you minimize the use of stop words like the, and, is, etc. in the title. They don't do you any favors whatsoever. There's no value in that. The preferred format is to put your primary keywords first. So keep that in mind. But aside from being a critical factor for Google from an SEO perspective, a good page title tag can really heavily influence users. And the more appealing it is, the more likely it is to be clicked. So make sure it makes sense, because the ultimate goal is to get people to click through to your site. Now, this is, as I mentioned, it is unique per page. So you'll have to do this for every page of your site. Then you've got meta description. So that's that next section that you see in the red box. Again, with a meta description, it's not visible in any part of your website. It is something that sits in the coding behind the scenes. If you use a content management system with an SEO plugin, it will be very easy to update this, but it's the little description that's found under your title in search results. It doesn't actually affect your ranking in search engines, but if it is well written, it will encourage people to click through to your site. Obviously, that gets you traffic to your site. But so it's like a mini ad for your web page, and it's free. Now, you have to keep in mind here that if you don't enter a meta description, Google will do it for you. And the way Google does it, it takes a small sample from the text of your pages. So sometimes they're cut off or not relevant to your keywords. So you absolutely want to take control of this yourself. It's only 160 characters that you need to use to make sure your text doesn't get cut off. Don't use the same meta description for every page. It should be unique to the content that's on each page of your website. All right, now the last two elements of on-page SEO are alt tags and heading tags. Now, alt tags are used for images. They're essentially HTML tags that you can use to describe what an image is. So a search engine can't see an image as such. So without a description, they don't have any idea what it is. So if they can find your image, or if they can attribute some of your keywords to that image, if it's correctly labeled, then it has SEO value. But you could also appear in a Google Images search as well. So keep that in mind. I would recommend that you include local keywords or the title of the page with the keywords that you're trying to rank for in this alt tag. Then you've got heading tags. So heading tags, what you see on the right-hand side, they're really important for SEO because Well, they're important for the reader as well. So they help the reader of your content to determine how important the content is, but it helps Google web bots to determine what the content is on your page and how important it is as well. So as a user of a website, you might glance over a page. So if you've got clear headings there, it's important to draw your eyes to specific topics. Search engines use the heading tags as indicators of context. So what's on the page and how does it relate to what the user is searching for? The heading tags all carry different weights, with a H1 being the most important, and that is really the main page heading. So I would recommend that you try and think of it like you see on the screen. H1, that should be what the entire page is about, the most important part of the content. And then as you go down to smaller headings, H2, H3, H4, that's what that particular section is about. So again, this is done in the code part of your website, so behind the scenes. If you're not a web developer, or if you don't have access to the back end of your website, just simply ask your web developer it's for clarification on the tags that have been used on your site. So also keep in mind, we're doing an absolute fly through today. More information is available on each and every one of these topics, or you can connect with a specialist advisor. So keep that in mind. All right. Then we're looking at off-page SEO. So off-page SEO or off-site SEO are any actions that are taken outside of your own website to impact your rankings within a search engine results page. So off-page optimization should really make up the majority of your SEO strategy because it helps build the credibility of your website. So it is really important. You want your website to rank above others that have similar messages. So to achieve that, you need to build your website's authority. So there's a number of ways, I should say, that you can do that. Link building is the first, and that's the process of getting external pages to link to a page on your website. So building links can be complicated. It can be time consuming. Not all links are created equal. So you have to remember that a link from an authoritative website will make a much greater impact on your search engine results than a link from a newly built or a low quality site. So basically, Google bots count all the links that come into your website, and they'll give more weight to quality links and rank accordingly. So if your website had 100 poor quality links and your competitor had 15 good quality links, the chances are your competitor will rank higher than you. So keep that in mind. But also keep in mind, Google has become very, very good at spotting a scam. So make sure that you have good quality links, that they come from a trusted and a reputable site, or a site that's relevant to your type of business. Generally speaking, they will have some kind of human intervention to implement them. So they're not easy to come by. You might have a membership that you sign up to, and then that gives you a link from the membership organization's website through to yours. They should add value to the reader and be likely to be clicked by the reader. But there are a number of ways to get good backlinks. The first way is to earn them. Organic backlinks are SEO gold, and that's really earning through quality content. So it basically happens when another user is so impressed by your content that they either link to it or they share it. So they obviously only make that decision if the content's relevant to them, it's unique, it's useful, it could be authoritative or educational, so a number of factors there. So if you are writing content, blogs and that kind of thing, you have to make sure that it is very good. You should also stay active on social media and regularly add to your blog pages and publish articles and that kind of thing. Create that content that people can then share. The next way is to build backlinks. So networking, build relationships to build backlinks. You need a bit of an action plan in this sense. So make contact with other website owners and managers and ask for a link to your content if it's appropriate, of course. Perhaps you're working with someone and you might stock products from a particular supplier, so it might be relevant for them to link back to your website. You might offer to write posts for other blogs. But definitely check for any unlinked mentions of your business or brand on other websites. So if there are any mentions of your business and there's not a link, absolutely request a link. Or if you find that a link's broken, go through to them and request a working link. Another way of accumulating backlinks is to create inbound links yourself. So add your website to business directories or niche websites that are relevant to your business. and there's a few key ones. And then check out your competitors. So really easy way to get backlinks that's often overlooked is just to do that competitor research. Google their business names and see what websites they come up for. Now, if those websites that happen to be relevant to your business, click through to them and then see if you can find a contact and ask for a backlink as well. Definitely pursue those same opportunities. Other non-link related offsite SEO includes social media and brand mentions. So earning those links is probably the most commonly practiced off-page SEO, but any activity that occurs outside of your own website and helps to improve your search engine rankings could be thought as off-site SEO. So any social media advertising that you're doing or marketing that you're doing is absolutely sending signals to search engine results pages as well. So the more likes, comments, shares, the more engagement you get, the more value it has for your business from an SEO perspective. And I did say brand mentions. You might come across some unlinked brand mentions. And as I said, when you're creating backlinks or when you're doing that research, make sure that you do ask for them to be linked if possible. Unlinked brand mentions can still have SEO value, but you definitely want them linked if you can. All right, now SEO is ranking organically when people search, but there's also SEM, search engine marketing. Now that's where you can set up advertising and you pay per click. We're not going to get into SEM today. We do have a specialist webinar just on SEM, but I'm going to just talk to you quickly about Google AdWords. Now that's a Google AdWords product called remarketing. Now, remarketing is pay-per-click. It's amazing to increase brand awareness and it's very low cost. Remarketing is a very simple concept. So if you have a look at the image that's on your screen, basically what you're doing is reinforcing your brand to people that have already visited your website. So somehow a prospect comes to your site, and that could be through a brochure. It could be through some of your grassroots marketing or a sponsorship or social media posts. But they're on your site, they get tracked, they leave your site for whatever reason. They could get distracted, busy, researching your competitors as well. Your ads then start to appear in banners or pop-ups on other sites that they browse. Those sites have to have Google advertising space on them, of course, for your ad to appear there. But thinking about that, you almost definitely have been a recipient of remarketing, but you just might not have noticed it. It is, like I said, very cost effective. And yeah, it's something that you should absolutely set up. You do have to have a bit of code on your website. So there is setup required to actually implement it. But again, there's more information available on that through our specialist webinars and through advisors. Yes, someone's just commented that remarketing is cyber stalking. Somewhat, but depending on your business, you see a lot of companies like, here's an example of who does it, or anything from Gumtree to TripAdvisor to a lot of the big guys. Airbnb are really bad as well, but you'll notice that they really aggressively do it. The best thing about remarketing is that you set the rules. So you might say, okay, I only want to serve my ads up a couple of times a day, so you don't get that really overwhelming, that real stalking sort of feeling. And you might only do it for a couple of days. So you might know that your customers will generally have made a decision within 48 hours of researching your product or service. Some products that are a higher value tend to have a longer decision-making period. So you might, let's say you're selling really high-end products, you might extend that out to, let's say, you might serve your ads up for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So really you set those rules. So if you don't want to get into that sort of stalk factor, make sure that you reduce the frequency of those ads. So that's a key factor. It all comes down to your brand as well. All right, so a really critical part of marketing effectively and doing so on a limited budget is controlling and measuring your marketing. So essentially you'll have to define the method of measurement before you launch any advertising, but you have to evaluate all marketing activities. So define that measurement before you implement that activity, but make sure you actually do evaluate it. Compare your goals and results to identify any deviations. And look at what the causes of those deviations are. Then you might need to formulate a new plan or a new action Now, correcting any problems once you've identified them, or it couldn't be, maybe it's not a problem, maybe it's an opportunity. So making sure that you are able to exploit those opportunities. Now, you have to make sure that you stay disciplined and follow what your objectives are in terms of price, quantity of sales, and also your budgets. But keep in mind, if conditions change, you'll have to adapt your marketing plan to fit those conditions. So, for instance, you could have a product or service that's weather dependent. So if there's bad weather, it could really affect what your campaign does. It's not that you've done anything wrong with the campaign, it's something beyond your control. Things like lockdowns, you might have to pause all advertising and restart it again when it's appropriate. So make sure that you revise those quantity objectives in sales if you fail to achieve your sales targets as a result of changing conditions as well. I believe that the best marketing plan is one that's reviewed often. And when you learn lessons from one year, carry them over to the next as well. So you might know that, we've got Black Friday coming up. You might know that, this is a peak time for you to make sales. So you note that for next year so that you're planned, you can do so in advance and you can take advantage of that. All right, so in terms of metrics, you might be wondering what you should actually measure. I'd recommend at a minimum that you set up monthly reporting to measure the elements that I've got on your screen now. So your sales and leads, your total sales, or it could be leads as in, people reach out to make contact, and then break that down by specific products and services. Look at the cost associated with lead acquisition, so your marketing spend, and then your conversion rate on leads. So how many people did you actually convert to sales? Also have a look at your web stats, so your unique users. That's exactly how many people came to your site, and compare your unique users to website sales so that you can get an idea of how well your website converted. Sessions, which is how many times those users came onto your website. Your average page views, that's a really important metric because depending on how deep users are going into your sites, which is how your page views is how many pages they're viewed overall. So if you've got a broad range of content, your average page views might be 3 or 4, but if you don't have much information on your website, it could be lower. But you want to be measuring to make sure that people are engaged with your site. Your goals and conversions, if you've got them set up in your Google Analytics, and looking at referrals, so referral traffic. So where is your web traffic actually coming from in terms of those external websites that might be linking back to your site? Also look at your social media stats. So your reach, your engagement per post, making sure that engagement is your core focus, not numbers. So I would care more about actual engagement than I would number of likes on your page and that kind of thing. So keep that in mind. All right, we're just a little bit over time, so sorry about that. It's attributed to our slightly late start. But that does wrap up our session on strategic marketing on a shoestring budget. I hope it makes sense to you all. Like I said, it's an absolute fly through, just to give you some bare minimum things that you should be considering to market on a shoestring budget. I hope there's some things that you can take out of this, but do keep in mind that we have advisors that can give you one-on-one mentoring and or increase your sort of skills in a range of these areas. Now, if you're not already part of the program, you can sign up. It's just $44 to access 3 hours of one-on-one coaching, and then a minimum of 4, but as many hours of webinars like the one that you've joined today. So hopefully that helps you. I'm going to stay on now and answer any questions, so feel free to add them. Just quickly, if you are signing up, there are some basic eligibility requirements in terms of where you're located, WA, Queensland and NT, and you have to be a business operating for profit and employ less than 20 full-time staff. So thank you everyone for your nice comments that you're popping on there now. I'll make sure that you get that marketing template, so absolutely have a crack at that. If you have any questions whatsoever, shoot them through. I'll stay on, and don't forget that you get the recording as well. So have a great day. Thank you again, and I hope that we catch up again soon.